There is always a cause for gratitude and praise. And choosing to speak the language of gratitude and praise is a form of a spiritual discipline and a form of sacred speech. It's a spiritual discipline because I think it takes practice. That's what Rhonda's story was talking about, is all these things happen around us. And you can go through your day and your week and just completely ignore it all. Or you can be attentive to the rise of the sun, to the sound of the birds, to the life around us, to the food that we eat. And you can acknowledge every single thing as it comes and decide that I'm going to say thank you for that. And it's a discipline. It's a spiritual discipline. And it's incredibly powerful, the way it has the ability to change our hearts and our minds and our attitudes. I was reminded of the power of that just on Friday night this past week. Ryan was over eating with us. Natalie was working at the hospital for the evening, and he came over. And he was there for a while, and then he had to leave because he had agreed to go down into Minneapolis, and he has a cohort and a fellow graduate student in psychology who's from China, a young woman. And she's here for the first time in the country, and she's now living, has another roommate, but in graduate housing. But her father was arriving from China, and he was bringing 5 suitcases for her of stuff. And she didn't have anyone to pick up things, and so Ryan offered to go pick up the suitcases at the hotel where her father was. Well, it turns out, I didn't know this until we got in the car and began to talk about it. Ryan knew a little bit, but he didn't know a whole lot until they got in the car with us then after we picked them up, that her father is an archaeologist. And he's been working, this is his title, he's the Deputy Director General of the Shanghai Provincial Cultural Relics Bureau. But his claim to fame and why he's here is that he's one of the archaeologists who discovered some of the famous terracotta warriors from the first Chinese dynasty. And they are on display here at the Minneapolis Institute of Arts. And so he's here with a delegation, leading a delegation of people who are going to be meeting for the next couple of days there and actually visit. And I think it will be an interesting visit. He does not speak a word of English, so he'll have translators. And so that was very fun to meet him and her and to transport them from the hotel with the luggage to her apartment. But when we arrived there and we took the luggage in, we were ready to leave, and he kind of grabbed Ryan by the shoulder, and she said, "We're not quite ready to go yet." And he pulled out this little box, and in this kind of ritualistic way, handed this box to Ryan and she asked him to open it. It was wrapped. And opened it up, and it was a handmade necklace. And the explanation was that it was a blessing for a first child. It was to be given to the mother and then given to the first child. And of course, he gave it to Ryan, and he's bowing and he kept going on and on, profusely thanking. And then we were ready to leave, and we kind of walked out, and she said, "Wait, we have to walk out with you because it's tradition in the culture that the host walk the guest out and say thank you for being there." And so it was just it was amazing and just very touching to watch this expression of gratitude that was very heartfelt, and also, I'm sure, as part of the culture, incredibly important. The giving of gift and the saying thank you and not taking something for granted. The going out of your way to help someone, but to actually make a point of saying thank you for that. And the practice of doing that, I think, is just, sometimes we take it for granted. But it's something that changes a person when you make a practice of saying thank you and saying you're welcome. And so you find yourself in a world that's a mess, and yet you also find these expressions of gratitude that touch your heart and bring you hope and show you that there is hope in the world. And speaking the language of gratitude is also a kind of sacred speech. I mean, sacred speech is language we use that reminds us that however we understand God, however we define God or the divine, that when we use this kind of language, that we say with our language that we acknowledge the fact that God is present here, and that we are standing in some way or another on sacred ground, on holy ground. And to say thank you to people for their gifts given, their work done, their effort made, their very presence, is a way of allowing the Spirit of God, of love, joy, peace, sacredness itself to be present in the language. It's forgiveness, that's part of the language of sacred speech, and saying thank you is part of the language of sacred speech. Thank you. You are welcome. It changes the atmosphere. Sometimes we think that no thanks is necessary. Sometimes we think that, well, we're just doing our job. It's our duty. Sometimes I think we think that we can instill that kind of thing in our children, too. And I talk about that some because I kind of grew up in that culture, where no thanks was really needed because it's your job. It's your job to do these things, and you shouldn't express to be thanked for the things that are your job. I think there's a much more powerful lesson to be gained in actually and always saying thank you. I honor the work that you do. I am so grateful for your gift. Even if it's something that you need to do, you did it, and I'm thankful for it. And you are welcome. I am grateful that you noticed and appreciated. It's such a graceful and grace-filled kind of an atmosphere when we make a point of living in that kind of language, saying thank you and you're welcome. It's amazing the power of speech. I talk about it all the time, and it's because I'm witness to so much speech that isn't graceful in the world. And it's incredibly hurtful. And we just sometimes get in the heat of things and we forget the power of our own expressions to be a presence for healing and hope. And thank you and you're welcome is such an important part of that. So it's Thanksgiving this week. And I invite you to watch yourself and pay attention to the opportunities that come up on a daily basis between now and Thanksgiving and then through Thanksgiving, where you have the opportunity to actually say thank you to someone for something that they have done for you, or to acknowledge the thank you that comes your way and to actually say you're welcome. See if you can be attentive to the day as it goes along and the many opportunities that will come up to express your gratitude for the people around you, for the things that you are doing, and take the opportunity to be grateful and to say thank you. Thank you for listening.